Well, it's good to be with you guys, and I'll tell you, this speaks a lot of you all, that your reputation is so great. I'm an optometrist by training, as Randy mentioned, so if you're having trouble with your cataracts or need any free advice about your glasses or contacts, I'll be glad to do that. But I learned as an optometrist very early that you could be legislated in or out of business. And optometry has a very strong organization like yours because there's one in every community. And so you all are scattered out all amongst the state, and I can't tell you how important it is for you to stand in numbers and talk to people like myself and my staff, whether you're traveling to Washington or whether you're here getting us all together. The fact that you were able to get all of the delegation here to visit with you and spend time is wonderful. But don't ever underestimate the power of your visits to Washington, your visits throughout the state, whether you're talking to your federal delegation or your state delegation about the issues that are so very important. Federal government, state government also now is so reaching, into different areas, especially with agriculture. It really is important that you have a strong voice. Now, we miss you not being in Washington this year. There's different things. I kind of set the calendar by different things. This is March Madness, and that's always fun, so I've got that. Later on in the year, the county fair would come around. My girls were very active and showed cows, and I'm probably the only senator. Joni Ernst might, but I think I'm the only senator that has an AI certificate and used to take care of my cows. I was the bull at my place for several years. So anyway, fair time, things like that. Another thing was, many of you all coming to Washington to talk to myself and the staff about, the importance of these things. My wife, on one occasion, I was not there, and Randy, and the crew was up there. You guys were up, and gals, and so Kathy filled in for me and went to probably 3 or 4 events, 3 or 4 meals and stuff, and I'd been gone. It was kind of like this year. It was kind of one of those messed up years where the House and Senate weren't in sync, and you all were there, and we weren't really in session and stuff. And so I got there and kind of caught up, and we were riding home from an event, and Kathy looked at me and she said, these people are just wonderful. She said, they're so nice, they're so smart, and just went on and on. And she said, all they want to do is eat. So I know there's lots of restaurants in Washington right now that are sad that you all aren't up there eating the big steak and then having the creme brulee. But what I'd like to do is talk to you for just a few minutes. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. One of the things that I think we had a victory, it's not a glamorous thing, but it really was a victory. Earlier in the year, there was an effort to get into the Farm Bill. And as far as I'm concerned, we've got a 5-year contract. How do you, do your business if you're going to renegotiate it or just kind of go in there and one party do what they want to do? How can you plan for the future? And so there was an effort to take a couple $2 billion out of the Farm Bill. To their credit, Pat Roberts in the Senate, Mike Conaway in the House, Debbie Stabenow also in the Senate, her House counterpart, Peter. Who's the House? Yeah. Stood together, and as a result, they said, no, we're not going to let you do this. They formed ranks with the committees, the Senate committee, the House committee, Republicans and Democrats working together, because as you all know, these aren't partisan issues. These are more regional issues with agriculture. But everybody formed ranks, they stood together, which they simply have to do, because every year, as we write the farm bills, there's fewer and fewer people that are really interested in agriculture. There's so many more people that are interested in the other aspect, the commodities feature. But we formed ranks, and as a result, that was defeated. It was pushed back. And so I think that sent a very, very strong message, not only this time, but in the future. When people look for money, they figured out that that's not an easy pot of money to go to. So that's really very, very positive as we go forward and again, make sure that the Farm Bill is not raided in the future. The other thing that's positive right now, I'm a guy that believes in trade with Cuba. All of the studies, that when you look at them indicate that Arkansas comes out right at the very top of that. And I say that because it is good for the people of Arkansas, it's good for the people of America, but most importantly, it's good for the Cuban people. And we've been running the same play for the last many, many years. I had the opportunity to get to know Tom Osborne very, very well when he was in the House of Representatives, a great coach from Nebraska. And I came in a special election, literally, as I went in and I don't know anybody. The freshman class has already been together for a year. I go down and sit down, and the guy I sat by, just by chance, was Tom Osborne. And so because I'd been at Arkansas and he knew Coach Broyles very well, he really did just kind of adopt me and take care of me. So I sat by him for a couple of hours every day when we were voting, literally for 5 years. But this was something he was very, very passionate about. And he'd get up on the floor of the House and talk about the importance of trade with Cuba. And he said that as a young coach, he learned very, very early that if you ran the same play time after time and it wasn't working, you needed to do something different. And so we've been running the same play with Cuba for many, many years. It hasn't worked. So the fact that we're reaching out and trying to do something different, I think is very, very positive. You have to be consistent. I have to be consistent. I feel like I am consistent, but we trade with a lot worse people than the Cubans. When you look at the Saudi Arabians, the Vietnamese, the Chinese, and the list literally goes on and on. Like I say, that's really not an argument not to do this. So lots of positives. I think that is going to happen. It's going to take a while, but we're really chipping away. Vic Sider and I were two of the original Cuba working group back in probably 2002 is when that started. Join Emerson from Missouri and several others, Democrats and Republicans working together. Vic is a nice guy and a good friend. Vic and I politically, though, are very, very far apart in lots of things. But again, when it came to these kind of things, we were right together, as were, again, many Republicans, many Democrats. So that's positive. We're also pleased with Colombia. That seems to be helping a little bit. We talk a lot about trade. I think what you all export, 40% of the product? That's something like that. So these things are really very, very important. The key is striking. We're not for free trade. We're for fair trade. Striking deals that are good for both sides. And I know that our trade ambassador is really working very, very hard to get that done. But it's a challenge because of all of the different industries represented and the different problems that all of these countries face with different sectors. But again, that's the commitment. So that's as we go forward, we have to recognize that. We have to make sure that whatever deal that we strike is good for America, good for the American worker, as well as good for the other countries that are represented. Now, I'll be glad to answer any easy questions that you've got. What else do we need to be working on? Regulations. Oh, thank you very much. One thing, I was with a group last night, one thing that we in events like this, you tend to dwell on the problems that we have, and we've got a lot of problems in the country and working hard to solve those problems. But we forget, truly, I'm not just saying this. I've had the opportunity, I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House, and now I'm on the Foreign Affairs part of Appropriations in the Senate. So I have had the opportunity to travel a lot, throughout the world, and whether it's the Middle East or, areas. I've been to Afghanistan and Iraq many, many times, but also just in various places. We really are blessed. We are the greatest, freest country in the world. The whole world looks to us. And there's tremendous opportunity, in our country. I was at the prayer breakfast. We have a prayer breakfast on Wednesdays in the Senate and one on Thursdays in the House. And that's a time when, senators just come together and talk about their faith. And you park all of the the stuff outside the door, it's Democrats and Republicans. I know the Arkansas legislature has a similar thing, but this has been going on since the Eisenhower administration. So Senate meets on Wednesdays, the House meets on Thursdays. And again, it's just a very, very nice time of an hour, like I said, not worrying about all the stuff that you read about. Once a year, they have a national prayer breakfast, and people from all 50 states will come up. Again, this goes back to Eisenhower. He was the first president to participate in this. The Senate and the House run it. They asked the president to come over. A couple years ago, Ben Carson, the fellow that ran for president, was the speaker. And he was talking about his mom and how he grew up. His mother was one of, I believe, 24 children. She was married when she was 13. And after she was married, she had him and his brother, and found out shortly after that his dad was a bigamist and had a whole separate family. So she was left, dealing with these two kids with a third-grade education. And she was cleaning houses. And she figured out she prayed that the Lord would bless her with the wisdom how her children could develop wisdom. And so as she was cleaning these houses, she figured out that the people that were there spent a lot of time reading, working on problems, not sitting around watching television all day, every day. So she came home and told her boys that they had to read 2 books a day, and then she made them write a little book report, about each book. Now, they didn't know that she didn't have the education to really even read the book report, but she'd mark it up and do all this stuff, and give it back. But again, I say all that, not singling out Ben Carson, because we could go around the room, and some of you, maybe not to that extent, but that's really what Arkansas is all about, is changing the generations. My dad was a master sergeant in the Air Force. He was in the Guard when he was a junior in high school and got called up. He didn't have a lot of education until he got in the service and got some there, but he had a great appreciation and made sure that my brother and sister and I got a good education. And so again, that's what it's really all about, is working together to do that. But there's no other country in the world that a Ben Carson, or some of you, could get in the positions that you are. Here's a guy that came up through that way and basically became the top of his profession. Is one of the most respected neurosurgeons in our country and the world. So those are good stories, and those are things that we shouldn't forget. But it hadn't just happened. It's taken a lot of hard work, generation after generation, not only in the military, and we do appreciate all of you that have served, but just everyone. The people, Randy mentioned the school board, how important, things like that, serving. Coach Broyles, when I was there, and Coach Broyles, if you ever hear him speak, always talks about there's 2 kinds of peoples. There's people that are givers and there's people that are takers. And trying to be a giver, and really that's what all of you all are about, and that's what your organization's about, and like I say, you can be very, very proud of what you represent. Yes?
Debbie Moreland.
Is this an easy question?
Actually, it's more of a comment. I think in light of the examples in our recent election period, I want to say how proud you have made us, that you are truly the example of a statesman. I mean, we have always been proud of the fact of how you've conducted yourself. You've represented us well. You've always taken our consideration of what is important to us. You've always acted like a gentleman. You've never tried to take the cheap shots. And I can't begin to tell you how much that means to us, that we can be proud of you. We don't have to worry about reading the news and seeing you've embarrassed us. And I just wanted to publicly thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I wish Kathy was here, my wife, to hear that. But I've got Kathy and 3 grown daughters, and I've got 2 little granddaughters. So, like I said, I wish they were here to hear that. But thank you very much, and we do our best. And a guy that's meant a lot to me was John Paul Hammersmith, who did a tremendous job. And when I went to visit with him, he said, I said, John Paul, tell me, or I said, Congressman Hammerschmidt, tell me about the job. Should I really want to do this? And he said, the great thing about being the congressman, which at that time was what I was running for, he said, the great thing is that you can use the power of the office for good. And so we worked really hard to do that. The other thing he said, John, always remember that once the election's over, there's not any Democrats, there's not any Republicans, there's just the people of Arkansas, and you need to take care of them. And we worked really hard to do that with ourselves and our staff. I don't care what you are. Like I say, we're just trying to move things forward and doing the best that we can. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Senator, first off, we want to thank you for your vote on the GMO labeling. We'd like for you to address that and talk about what might be the next course of action that we could possibly take in the Senate. We know that the Roberts bill was a good bill, and we certainly appreciate your support there. We feel like that we've heard around that Senator Stabenow is very much opposed and wants to put in a mandatory GMO labeling, and that would not be good for us, and it's not good for the nation or anybody, our consumers out there and those that buy the products and buy the groceries. It's not good for them either. It's going to cost them quite a bit of money also. And also, we're really burdened down with overreaching regulations by some of our federal agencies. If you could address those two issues, we'd certainly appreciate it.
No, for sure. Really, there's been two things that have been going on that are similar. The country of origin labeling, which really reached a crisis point where it looked like if we didn't get something done, and there was mixed opinions as to that issue, but we lost, in court on several occasions, 3 or 4 times. The compromise that came up with that particular situation, we knew that we were going to lose again, and so the Canadians and the Mexicans, were poised to put tariffs not only just on all kinds of products to the tune of several $1 billion. So Congress was able to work together, and avert that crisis and get legislation passed that did away with that. Now we're in the situation with the GMO labeling, and to their credit, all of the agencies, in fact, we had an ag committee hearing on GMO, and to their credit, all of the government agencies, in a situation where now, the government is a little bit wishy-washy with things sometimes, but all of the agencies came forward that had anything to do with this at all and said GMOs were safe, that the science was 100% behind this, so which was really good. On the other hand, there's just a group of people, you want things based on science, you don't want things based on science and common sense versus emotion. But there's a lot of people out there that simply don't like GMO products and would like them labeled, as if there were something wrong with them. So we've been fighting that. In Vermont, they went ahead and did that. As a result, the labeling standards would have to be changed for Vermont, whatever the particular state did. So you'd have all of these different labelings throughout the country. And that would cost the average family of 4, I believe, about $800, something like that. So it's a significant cost in having to comply with all this stuff. So we've been working really hard to try and reach a compromise. So far, we haven't been able to do that. And as you mentioned, Senator Stabenow, has very strong feelings on the other side that you have to have mandatory labeling and things. So right now, that's still up in the air. Senator Roberts came along with a compromise bill that was defeated. So, we're just working hard to get that done. The problem is that the timetable is starting to run out, and some of the major companies are starting to go ahead and label. So we'd like to, we'll continue to fight that battle, and hopefully we can work out something that, would make it such that we could appease Senator Stabenow and the group that feels that way. Arkansas delegation is firmly on your side in this, and so that's a good thing. Oh, and as far as the regulation, again, we just have to push back the waters of the U.S., which would make it such that traditionally things, waterways that have been regulated by the state, the federal government would take over. And it really is far-reaching. It's all about controlling property and what you do with it. And so, you know, if you're a developer and if you have a house and you want to add on to it, and as you add on, you know, you've got drainage into the drainage ditch that runs outside your home, then potentially under the regulation that they'd like to do, then you'd have to get a federal permit. And certainly with you all in the agricultural business, you know, controlling so much land and stuff, again, it's an effort to make it such. Farming has been excluded in the past. It's an effort to get their hooks into the farm community and control land use and, you know, land rights. So we pushed back on that. We were able to actually, you know, get something passed. We don't have the votes to override vetoes and things like that. The good news in regards to the waters of the U.S., it's clearly unconstitutional. The Constitution says that the federal government is responsible for navigable waters, and that in the past has been kind of pushed out a little bit. Well, you know, waters that drain into the navigable and things, and so there's what they call a nexus, you know, in that regard. And that's been fairly liberal, but not anything like, you know, what this regulation is like. So the lower courts have ruled, and I think we've got an excellent chance, you know, of having that overturned. So it's good.
Senator, thank you so much for what you do for us in Arkansas. We know you understand what we do and how important it is for the farmers and ranchers in Arkansas, and you're out there fighting for us every day. And we have a great representative in you, and we really, really appreciate that. Let's give Senator Boozman a big hand.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.